This week at the state capitol, Governor Kathy Hochul unveiled her fiscal year 26 executive budget proposal. Now, the proposal comes out to about $252 billion and placed a big emphasis on affordability.
Many families do continue to struggle. Nationwide inflation, the rising costs at the grocery store every month, working New Yorkers having to face such difficult choices on how to stretch all their dollars. That's why this budget is laser focused on putting money back in New Yorkers' pockets. This will be a $252 billion budget, funded by revenue that is up nearly 8%. And importantly, we've maintained our reserves at historic highs of more than $21 billion.
Some of the highlights of the budget include money for families. The governor says that she wants to put money back into the pockets of New Yorkers by way of inflation reduction checks, a child care tax credit, and middle-class tax cuts. The other big-ticket items in the budget include funding for updating the state's foundation aid formula, the controversial cell phone bans in schools, and universal school meals. Now, all of this will be done without raising taxes for New Yorkers, according to the governor's office. In this next segment, we unpack the highlights of the governor's executive budget proposal and the reception from stakeholders. Here's that story. Governor Kathy Hochul unveiled her highly anticipated executive budget proposal at the state capitol on Tuesday with a large focus on affordability. The fiscal year 26 executive budget comes out to $252 billion, which is about $10 billion more than last year's enacted budget. The budget puts an emphasis on putting money back into the pockets of New Yorkers, protecting their safeties, and protecting the overall health of the state, all without raising taxes, according to the governor's office. The proposal comes just 1 week after Hochul's State of the State address. In that message, Hochul provided a glimpse into her dreams of state funding this year, and the executive budget proposal puts dollars behind those dreams.
A budget is much more than numbers. It tells a story of who we are, what we value, and who we're fighting for. New York is a complex state. We have great wealth and great need. And our challenge is to foster an environment where success thrives while making those who feel left behind, they can still see a path forward.
To start out, Governor Kathy Hochul said she wanted to help New Yorkers financially, given the rising cost of inflation. The proposal includes funding for inflation refund checks, middle-class tax cuts, and expanding the child tax credit. It also included funding for universal school meals and an effort to fully repeal the state and local tax deduction on the federal level.
This puts nearly $5,000 back in the pockets of many New York families. That's how you answer Dr. King's question. That's how you make a difference.
Not everyone was a fan of the governor's proposal. Among critics of the governor's plan were Republican lawmakers. At a media briefing with the press, Senate Republican leader Rob Ortt blasted the governor and Democrats for what the conference calls unnecessary and frivolous spending through the years.
And this nonsense about affordability, that we can spend our way to affordability, I'm sorry, it's just not a plausible policy solution. We need to do other things. We need to cut costs for New Yorkers in every way we can. And this budget, from what I can tell, is not going to do that.
When asked about the way the governor and Democrats should be looking at affordability, Ortt said that they should be considering action sooner rather than later to maximize effectiveness.
Don't do it over 2 years. Do it now. Do it, phase it in immediately, bold, bigger, immediate. Get a shot for these folks who need real relief, or at least the notion that there's real relief coming. You know, if it's just this little bit, you can talk about it as big as you want, but no one really sees that, and that's what we need. We're past the cutting around the corners when we talk about returning people's money to them.
As part of her executive budget, Governor Hochul proposed extending the top tax rate on high earners in New York State. At an unrelated press conference before the announcement, State Senate Finance Chair Liz Krueger affirmed her support of this measure.
Yes, I also support the governor in not allowing that tax formula to sunset. I actually think most people who are paying it sort of knew it wasn't going to sunset anyway. So this is the governor confirming we're not planning on sunsetting. I suspect any proposals for new taxes or changes in taxes is all part of a mix of what happens in budget negotiations in order to accomplish the much broader goals of, do we have adequate revenue to cover the critical issues for New Yorkers? And I'm going to leap to the assumption that my leader doesn't think we know any of that yet.
And this year, Governor Hochul proposed fully funding an updated foundation aid formula.
We're replacing a 20-year-old poverty metrics data with current census data to more accurately determine student need. This will ensure that state dollars go to the students who need them the most.
On higher education, the governor proposed $2 billion in new funding for capital projects at both SUNY and CUNY. The governor also proposed free community college for adults between the age of 25 and 55. Last year's state budget saw the governor and legislature at odds over how to address the financial issues plaguing SUNY Downstate in New York City. This year, Governor Hochul pledged $100 million to support the hospital, bringing the total investment to $200 million, a move largely praised by SUNY Chancellor John King in an interview with New York Now.
You know, when we started this conversation a year ago, Downstate was facing a $100 million a year annual deficit, was poised to run out of cash by summer of 24, and had a building in terrible disrepair and no plan for improvements. We sit here today in a vastly different position because of the governor's leadership.
The chancellor also went on to express gratitude for the capital investment for SUNY in the plan, while saying that there should be room to open the conversation on even more funding. The SUNY Board of Trustees has proposed a $10.7 billion capital plan over a 5-year period.
Look, we're very appreciative of the investment this year, and we are going to continue to make the case that what we need as a state is a 5-year capital plan for SUNY.
The governor also proposed banning cell phones in schools, a measure that has been at the center of controversies over several months. Under the governor's $13.5 million proposal, the cell phone ban would apply during school hours and would be left to school districts to figure out enforcement.
We're not developing the skills we need because kids are distracted with the cell phones. And how hard it is for our teachers trying to teach algebra and geography, and they're competing with viral dances and messages from their friends and sometimes threats, bullying. How do you pay attention to the subject at hand when this is going on? It didn't happen when we were younger.
When asked about the measure at an unrelated press conference, State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Storch-Cousins told reporters that there would be a robust conversation between leaders regarding this proposal.
You know, I mean, there are some schools that are already working with different scenarios about cell phones and how they are stored. So it's not like it's not being done in some places. I have a youth advisory council, and I have a lot of kids who are going to schools where they are already practicing that. So I don't know, but I know this will be a conversation whether or not, if we were to do this, would this be enough? But I would imagine that this number came from, the experience of what many schools have already done.
According to the governor's office, the executive budget is largely funded by revenue, which is up nearly 8%, and the state has adequate funds in reserves.
And importantly, we've maintained our reserves at historic highs of more than $21 billion. We're investing more in New Yorkers, because we have more resources to do so, and we're doing it responsibly.
While this is a positive, good government groups are encouraging the governor and the legislature to consider the out-year budget gaps over the next few years to keep the states in good financial standing.
Right now, there's still this glut of cash from the economy performing better than expected over the last few years, especially. So there is a lot to be spent right now. But when we look over a longer time frame, there's still multi-billion-dollar budget gaps as big as $11 billion. So the concern is really about the decisions that we're making now with the money that's available and what the long-term implications of them are. And frankly, they do put the financial plan in a riskier position.
With the release of the governor's executive budget, the executive and legislative leaders will now head into negotiations for the next several weeks. The hope is to come to an agreement to meet the April 1st deadline to start the new fiscal year. And for more information on the executive budget proposal and negotiations ahead, you can visit our website. That's at nynow.org.